Have you ever stopped to think about how a military thinker from, what, 2,500 years ago, how someone like that might still give us the keys to understanding today's world? It's kind of wild, right? This ancient wisdom still having so much power. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, that's exactly what we're digging into. How Sun Tzu's ideas, from the art of war, how they actually shape modern geostrategy and military TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. We've been looking through this really detailed overview, Sun Tzu, geostrategy and modern military TTPs. And our mission really is to pull out the key insights, the surprising bits, to help you get a solid handle on this fascinating topic. Okay, so let's start unpacking this. The absolute core of Sun Tzu's thinking, even now it feels, well, simple, but also really deep. Winning isn't just about having the biggest army or the most force.
That's exactly right. That's the starting point. The source makes it clear real victory, lasting victory, comes from getting good at preparation, at deception, being adaptable, and gathering solid intelligence. It's often a much smarter, less costly way than just trying to bulldoze your opponent.
Yeah.
And this leads right into his core principles. The first one, maybe the most important, is know the enemy and know yourself. That's not just a nice saying. It's like the foundation. It means seriously understanding your opponent and being brutally honest about your own strengths and, maybe more importantly, your weaknesses.
Right, understanding both sides makes sense. But that knowing yourself part, that feels like it could be just as tough, maybe tougher, than figuring out the enemy. Strategically speaking, where do people or organizations usually trip up on that?
That's a great point. And yeah, it's a huge hurdle. Often, groups are pretty good at looking outward, gathering intel on others. But looking inward, honestly, that's tough. There's ego, there are biases, maybe just not wanting to face unpleasant truths about your own limits. Real self-awareness needs that kind of, well, brutal honesty. It's hard, but Sun Tzu says it's essential. Then there's this really powerful idea, win without fighting. Basically, achieve what you need to achieve using diplomacy, maybe deception, shaping how people see things, so you actually avoid a big, costly fight altogether. The goal is to make fighting pointless or just too darn expensive for the other side to even try.
That really shifts the definition of winning, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
not just about who wins on the battlefield, but who gets their strategic goals met with the least damage or cost.
Precisely. Yeah, it broadens victory beyond just military success. It's about smart, strategic gains, avoiding those high costs. And a big piece of that ties into the next principle, deception as a force multiplier. This isn't necessarily like telling outright lies. It's more about manipulating what your opponent thinks is true, making yourself look weak when you're actually strong, or vice versa. It's misdirection, essentially, to make your existing strengths punch above their weight without needing, more actual stuff. And moving on, speed and flexibility, these are critical. It's about being able to react to changes, make decisions, and move faster than your opponent. Things are always changing, right? So standing still strategically, well, that's usually how you lose.
So react faster, stay agile. But how hard is that in practice? Especially for like big militaries or huge corporations, what's the main roadblock there?
Inertia is a big one. Just, the tendency to keep doing things the way they've always been done, bureaucracy, complex chains of command, even just a fear of making the wrong call quickly, all that stuff slows things down. Sun Tzu was kind of arguing for a much flatter, more responsive setup, which is still a challenge today. And then this preparation and positioning, absolutely vital. This means locking down the good ground, making sure your supply lines are solid, building alliances, doing all that before any fighting starts, setting the stage, basically. And finally, moral authority and cohesion. Sun Tzu knew that leadership, discipline, the unity of your own people, that's just as important as any weapon, maybe more so. A team that's united and believes in its leaders is just incredibly hard to break.
It's really something how these ideas from so long ago still resonate. And listening to this, you might be thinking, like you said, how this isn't just military stuff. It could be business deals, maybe even, I don't know, handling difficult personal situations. I mean, I can see the deception part in a chess game for sure. Where's a surprising place you've seen these work?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Know yourself and know your enemy. I've seen that applied very effectively in complex legal cases. Lawyers dig deep not just into the other side's case, but into their own weaknesses, potential jury biases, the judge's history. That self-assessment piece is absolutely critical for them.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Taking these ancient ideas and seeing how they plug directly into modern geostrategy. We're shifting from philosophy to like real-world global politics now.
Yeah, and the connection is surprisingly direct. It's not just a loose analogy. Sun Tzu's thinking gives us a solid framework for making sense of the power struggles playing out right now globally. Take his idea of seizing terrain advantage. Okay, today, that connects directly to geopolitical theories like Mackinder's Heartland or Spikeman's Ringland. These ideas about controlling key geographical zones for global influence, a really concrete example. Look at the focus on controlling strategic choke points like the Malacca Strait. So much global trade and energy flows through there. Controlling it gives immense leverage.
Right, so the terrain might be land, or it might be a shipping lane, or maybe even cyberspace now. But the principle holds: controlling key spaces gives you power.
Exactly. Then, winning without battle. How does that look today? Well, it looks a lot like economic statecraft or coercive diplomacy. Think about something like China's Belt and Road Initiative. It's a massive example of using economic investment, infrastructure projects, building dependencies, achieving huge strategic influence, arguably without firing a shot.
That's definitely playing the long game. What happens down the road when countries achieve goals that way, through economic means instead of military ones?
It shifts power in a different way, often creating these deep economic ties and dependencies that are, frankly, much harder to break than, say, pushing back an occupying army. It can change global alignments and economic patterns really profoundly, but sometimes subtly, over many years. And deception and intelligence.
Yeah.
Well, they have very clear modern parallels. We're talking OSINT, open source intelligence, signals intelligence, electronic warfare, EW. Think about cyber operations where attackers hide their tracks, make it look like someone else did it, or massive disinformation campaigns online trying to shape public opinion or confuse adversaries. It's all right there.
Brings it right into today's headlines, doesn't it? Deception isn't just about hiding troops in a forest anymore. What's maybe the most unexpected way digital deception is used now?
Maybe the sheer speed and scale of it. It's not just a few spies spreading rumors. Now you have, automated bot networks pumping out narratives, deepfakes that make it hard to tell what's real, sophisticated hacks that can even mimic the online activity of your enemy, creating this whole synthetic layer to the strategic game. Pretty wild. And speed and adaptability. We see that in things like rapid deployment forces getting troops and equipment somewhere fast, but also in AI helping with decision-making. Think about drone swarm tactics, lots of small, coordinated drones overwhelming defenses, or hypersonic missiles traveling so fast they drastically cut down reaction times. Speed is still king. And lastly, shaping perceptions. This is basically modern strategic communication, public diplomacy, influence campaigns, trying to win hearts and minds, or using legal challenges, sometimes called lawfare, not just to win in court, but to damage an opponent's reputation or legitimacy on the world stage. It's all about narrative control, influencing how your own people and the world see the situation.
It really is quite something. These ancient concepts giving us such a clear lens to view, the complex power dynamics happening right now. Okay, so we've talked big picture strategy, geostrategy, but how does this stuff actually turn into action, like on the ground or in cyberspace? Let's get into the specific tactics, techniques, and procedures, the TTPs inspired by Sun Tzu.
Right, this is where strategy gets operationalized, moving from the what and why to the how. Let's break it down. So first, tactics. These are the short-term moves, often on a battlefield or in a specific engagement. Things like setting ambushes, using feints, pretending to go one way to draw the enemy into a trap somewhere else. Classic Sun Tzu. We also see it in coordinated multi-domain attacks, hitting an enemy simultaneously from the land, sea, air, maybe cyber, space. The idea is to overwhelm their ability to respond effectively. And terrain shaping, actively altering the physical environment, like blocking mountain passes or maybe controlling key nodes in cyberspace to channel the enemy where you want them. It's about limiting their options.
Gotcha. So manipulating the situation with specific calculated actions in the moment.
Exactly. Then you have techniques. These are the methods, the how-to, for executing those tactics well. For instance, integrated deception. This means not just doing a physical feint, but maybe combining it with online disinformation to make it more believable, more confusing for the enemy. Another technique is reconnaissance-in-depth. That's about constant surveillance and intelligence gathering ISR to really understand what the enemy is doing and predict their next moves. And multi-vector pressure hitting them from different angles at the same time. Maybe military pressure, economic sanctions, and an information campaign all running together.
That multi-vector approach sounds incredibly difficult to coordinate properly. What's the main challenge in actually pulling that off?
Synchronization, definitely. Getting all the different parts, military, diplomatic, economic, intelligence agencies working together seamlessly, sharing information, staying on the same message. That requires immense coordination and a really clear, unified strategy to avoid tripping over each other. And finally, procedures. These are the standardized steps, the routines that help make operations consistent and effective. Things like setting up red teams, dedicated groups whose job is to think like the enemy and challenge your own plans, find the weaknesses before the real enemy does. Also, pre-positioning supplies and equipment near potential hotspots so you can react faster, and maintaining a layered deterrence posture using a mix of military strength, hard power, cultural or diplomatic influence, soft power, and a smart combination of both to try and discourage adversaries from even starting trouble.
Right. Those procedures sound like building the underlying system for applying the tactics and techniques effectively. The red team idea especially seems crucial for that know yourself part we talked about earlier. So pulling it all together, what does this mean for how militaries and security folks operate today? How have these Sun Tzu ideas actually been woven into modern, joint doctrine?
Well, the source really emphasizes how closely aligned Sun Tzu's core philosophy is with a lot of contemporary military thinking. Take strategic shaping before conflict. That's basically modern influence operations, trying to create favorable conditions globally, build alliances, manage perceptions, long before any shooting starts. It's about setting the stage.
How's that different from just, normal diplomacy? Is it more aggressive or just more joined up?
I'd say more integrated and definitely more proactive. Traditional diplomacy might react more, whereas strategic shaping is about actively creating the environment you want, using all the tools economic, info, diplomatic, military in concert, even when technically at peace. Then there's the huge emphasis on intelligence-driven operations. Today, that means relying heavily on fusing intelligence from everywhere. USINT, human, that's human spies. SIGINT, intercepted signals, satellite imagery, pulling it all together in fusion centers to get the best possible picture before making a move.
So it's way beyond just spies now. It's data overload almost. With all that information coming in, what's the biggest headache in actually using it effectively?
Yeah, information overload is a real challenge. Just sorting the important signals from all the noise. You need really sophisticated analysis tools, skilled people, and ways to quickly connect the dots between seemingly unrelated bits of data, then get that actionable intel to the decision makers fast. It's a constant race. And we've already touched on how deception and speed live on in things like electronic warfare, hiding your digital signature, using drone swarms for surprise and overwhelming effect. It's about gaining advantage through misdirection and just being faster. And finally, terrain and domain control isn't just about land anymore. It's about integrating operations seamlessly across land, sea, air, space, and cyber. Modern thinking is that you have to be able to operate and ideally dominate across all these domains at once. So, when you step back and look at the big picture, it really underscores that even with all the incredible technology we have now, those fundamental principles of strategy, competition, conflict, the ones Sun Tzu laid out, they're still incredibly relevant. They offer this timeless way to think about today's complex world.
So we've gone from Sun Tzu's ancient wisdom, exploring those core ideas like know yourself, know the enemy, win without fighting, all the way to seeing how they directly shape modern geostrategy. Think economic statecraft, cyber intelligence, and even specific military TTPs like those drone swarms or layered deterrence. And as you're processing all this, think about that idea from the source material about these frameworks like a Sun Tzu geostrategy matrix or integrating his ideas into a geopolitical diplomacy matrix. What that really tells us is that this kind of structured, integrated thinking isn't just history, it's alive. It's being actively developed and used right now to grapple with really complex global issues. So, the final thought to leave you with is this. How could applying that kind of systematic approach, breaking down challenges into knowing yourself, understanding the other side, using smart deception, staying adaptable, how could that help your own thinking about strategy, about influence, whether that's in world affairs, in your career, or maybe even just tackling a personal challenge? How can that structured way of finding unseen advantages change the game for you?